Good evening, everyone. My name is Damilla, and I'm with the My Voice, My Choice Leadership Group that's a part of the Chicago Abortion Fund. And so I'm extremely excited about our show tonight because typically, not only on this show, but amongst the pro-choice movement, we typically talk about the patient's perspective or the women who seek abortions and the barriers that they face to access abortion. But on tonight's show, we're talking about, we're getting the perspective from not only the provider, but the pre-provider's perspective. So with us tonight, we have Laura. She's a medical student. Kudos to her. So she is from she's a medical student at the Northwestern University School of Medicine. She's also a part of Medical Students for Choice, which is a pro-choice organization in which hundreds of medical students from various medical schools are involved in. So, Laura,
thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So, anything you want to say before we dive in?
No, you can go ahead. This is such a great experience, and the work that you do is so great, and I'm glad that we can collaborate and be here together tonight.
Thank you. So what is it exactly that Medical Students for Choice does, and for how long have you guys been doing the work?
So Medical Students for Choice, its mission is to train the next generation of abortion providers and pro-choice physicians. And the organization realizes that one of the main barriers to women having access to abortion is that there aren't enough trained providers to actually provide the procedure. So the organization actually started in 1993. And it was started by a few just really amazing med students who realized that there weren't enough providers, and if we were gonna have this procedure, then we needed more people to do it. So actually, what happened in that year was thousands of medical students across the country got a pamphlet that was targeted at abortion providers and said some really nasty and mean things about them, and students across the country got this pamphlet.
Wow.
And before that, people kind of just thought that, abortion was legal, and we didn't really have to worry about it. It was Roe v. Wade had already passed, and everything was fine. But after that point, the students realized that there was still tons of stigma around it, and things needed to change. So the organization started with just a few students, and it was really grassroots, just trying to educate other students. And now there's over 10,000 medical students and residents that have been part of this organization.
Wow.
It's really great. And so what the organization does is most medical schools across the U.S. and Canada, they all have chapters.
Okay.
And these chapters are run by first and second year medical students, and then they organize speakers and workshops to teach other medical students about the issues. So it's students teaching other students.
Wow.
Which is great. And they also work on curriculum reform, and that's one of the main focuses of the organization, is making it so that abortion and family planning is a more standard part of the medical school curriculum.
Right.
So that's a really big focus of the organization, too. In addition to these grassroots things at the school level, the national office does yearly regional conferences and national meetings that allow everyone to get together and talk about the issues and get to be with our like-minded people, like what you spoke at.
Right.
Yeah, which is great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so I know you mentioned earlier it's like over 150.
There's about 150 chapters because they're at most of the medical schools across the country have a chapter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's really good. Okay, so going along the lines of that, can you inform us on some of the barriers that both you as a student and some abortion providers face?
Yeah, of course. So, It's an interesting topic because abortion, although it's a safe and legal medical procedure, it isn't treated that way necessarily.
Right.
And a lot of students don't. A lot of medical schools don't make it a standard part of their curriculum. So that's definitely a barrier as a student.
Okay.
Is that we don't have. It's not necessarily part of the curriculum. As a provider, there's a lot more barriers. Actually, a year ago today was when George Tiller, the abortion provider in Kansas, was murdered.
Right.
So we're lucky in Chicago that it's a relatively safe place for abortion providers to be, but people aren't as lucky everywhere else. So, in addition, for this reason, 87% of counties in the U.S. actually do not have an abortion provider. So the shortage is pretty severe, and people don't realize it. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And even if people want to be an abortion provider and they're willing to do it and they think that it's important, oftentimes they'll have difficulties finding a practice that will allow them to do that. So if they want to join a specific OB/GYN practice, sometimes the other doctors will be like, we don't do those there. And they have to work to find it. And lastly, as I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, although Roe v. Wade has passed and abortion's legal, a lot of states have passed really restrictive laws, like the law in Oklahoma that was just passed, that was saying that physicians are required to show the ultrasound of the fetus and describe it in detail to the woman. And that's not just in Oklahoma, that's in other states too. Or there's some states that say that the physician is required to tell the woman that the fetus feels pain, when there's actually no medical studies, nothing medical that says it, but some politicians decided that that's what they were going to pass. Yeah. So that makes the doctor-patient relationship, it gets involved with that and makes it very difficult for abortion providers. And even in Illinois, we've had our battles recently about the parental notification law that is not going through right now, but it's still being debated about if women under the age of 18 are required to tell their parents about abortions. So all these different laws and safety issues and then the stigma surrounding it make it really difficult for people who want to be abortion providers.
That's ridiculous. Right now I'm going to flash some of our information over so you can get a glimpse of that. But yeah, going along with what you said, like that really is like heart-wrenching, and it really bothers me that all these stipulations that people try to impose, like, oh, you have to show this ultrasound and you have to like tell this patient that the fetus can feel this, or different things like that is really unnecessary.
Well, it's the issue is that it's a medical procedure that's legal,
right?
And although that's the case, it's not treated like you treat like an appendectomy or any other medical procedure.